If it's happening in Burbank, you ought to know, so tune into the Mike and Roy Show.
And now,
Mike and Roy.
hello Burbankers, and welcome back to the Mike and Roy Show. Roy and I thought it was important enough to touch again on Measure P, because we're getting a lot of propaganda out of our city staff and city council, and guess who's paying for it? We are. We just like to talk a little bit about that. We're spending a lot of our tax dollars on trying to convince residents to vote yes on Measure P, and we're trying to convince you to vote no on Measure P.
Mike, you touched on it. You kind of stole my thunder. The tax. This is our tax money, folks, being used to lead, if you will. And most people buy into it. They from their elected officials, they believe, this is what's best for our future and everything else. There's a lot of scare tactics going on. That we're going to have severe cuts in police, fire, library, other what they call essential city services. You are talking about a lot of tax money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars between the two measures that we know about. There's some money we don't know. We just don't know how much they really spent for Measure T back in June.
Yeah.
And now we got Measure P here in November. And I think a lot of folks back in June thought, okay, well, they're going to get their $12 million and gosh, we're going to be out of the hole. Well, here we are in November, and now we're talking about a massive. This will really jack up our sales tax here in Burbank to over 10%.
Yeah.
That's really, really high.
Yeah, it may be the highest in the country. If it's not the highest, it's one of the highest in the country, sales tax.
And couldn't that have, and I'm going to let you talk, but I'm sorry, I got to get this off my chest, but this hundreds of thousands of dollars we're talking about that the city spent of our money, couldn't that have not been used, yes, for essential city services?
Yeah.
What am I missing here?
Well, and anybody in Burbank who follows the city council and what the staff is up to knows that we've been threatened so many times, and we don't have the money. We don't have a revenue problem in Burbank. We have
a spending problem.
And we need to get that under control. After our budget was approved, after we heard these sob stories about how we're going to have to make all these cuts, and a budget was approved, we had something called a mid-year appropriation request. And that came around, I believe, in the beginning of March. Mm-hmm. And one of the requests for mid-year appropriations came from our city manager. Let's remember, one of the spending problems we have are salaries. And our city manager, no offense, nothing personal, our city manager is making almost as much as the President of the United States.
And he is making more than the governor of California.
Yeah. And he made an appropriations request for $175,000 to have a professional communications firm, Sorrell Associates, conduct a robust public education and outreach program to provide residents with information on a potential November 2018 ballot measure and demonstrate the importance of dedicated local funding, etc., etc. Now, that money is not being used to do public outreach and education. It's being used as propaganda. I have friends who have received phone calls that this money is being spent on, and the phone calls and the literature I've seen is all pro Measure P. We scare tactics. If we don't vote for Measure P, then we're going to lose all these city services. So it's not for education and outreach. It's propaganda. Please know that when you vote in November.
Yeah, and again, when somebody's scaring you into buying something, that's generally when you say, no thanks. If it's a good enough product or an idea, you don't need to be scared into it. Again, and Mike, we touched on this. We got a pattern going on here.
Yeah.
It was just June. We approved that Measure T, which, funny enough, rhymes with Measure P. So here we are, Measure P. What's going to happen in the spring or next summer? Or do we expect another or next fall?
C?
Another C, Measure C, something there, right? We had Measure B.
Yeah.
All that turned out with the airport. But so we got a rhyme thing, we got a rhythm thing going there. Where does it end?
Yeah.
It really feels like we're throwing good money after bad here, and there's no end in sight as far as we can tell.
Yeah, and another mid-year appropriation request back in March. At the very same time, the city manager asked for the $175,000 for public outreach and education.
Yeah.
He also asked for $32,650, and that was to utilize the polling firm FM3 to conduct a follow-up resident polling survey to assess residents' awareness and attitudes towards city services. And, you know, that's over $200,000 in what I consider propaganda. How about ask us? Why don't you ask us, about our awareness? You don't have to spend another $32,000 to hire a company to come in and do a poll. We're there at city council meetings. We're telling you, what our awareness is. You don't seem to care.
Well, let me piggyback onto those obscene numbers you just talked about, the money being spent. Every time that you put something on a ballot, it's never free.
Yeah.
It's approximately 160, as far as I can tell, what I've found out, 160 to 170,000 dollars every time you put something on a ballot. So that happened in June.
Yeah.
That let's say 65,000, and again in November. Our tax money to do this. So where does the insanity stop?
Right. And what I see happening is our city staff bringing these staff reports to our city council.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, all these mid-year appropriations and requests for
deep down in
funding
there.
the ballot measures and things like that are in there somewhere, maybe. But I don't think that our city council is always fully aware of exactly what they're approving. And the fact that they approve now probably over $500,000 to get these measures on the ballot and then to send out propaganda supporting these measures, over $500,000 of taxpayers' money, that's wasteful spending.
Well, and don't forget, Mike, the original model for how city council and city staff work and the constituents like us is the city council works for us. They direct staff.
They're supposed to.
Yeah. The tail is completely wagging the dog. Within recent memory here in Burbank, staff is running the show. I don't know if our council is outgunned or they don't have the time. I mean, I get it. They got a ton of stuff to go through. I don't envy them that job.
Me neither. But
that is their job.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like right now that council's directing staff.
Right.
It's the other way around.
The very ones who are overspending and not being responsible with our tax dollars, they're the ones calling the shots, and that's wrong. We need to get some city council members in our city council who will listen to residents, who will make smart decisions, and then direct staff.
At least ask the questions. And they might be wrong. Staff might be dead, spot on, and that's great. But it doesn't feel like they're being their feet held to the fire often enough. Anyway, staff. We're talking a lot of money here.
Yeah.
Quickly, Mike, I do want to say we appreciate you watching the Mike and Roy Show. We do want you to know that you're not going to get a lot of the things that we're talking about. You're not going to get it at a city council meeting.
Mm-mm.
You're not going to read it in the Burbank Leader. You're not going to see it on social media very much at all. So we need you to help share this. And people might not agree with anything we're saying, or a little bit, or none of it. They might love it.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, it seems like they do. So, but please share it. At least it gets the conversation going, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So we encourage you to do that. Also, and if you look up Mike and Roy shows on YouTube, we got a lot of other topics we have covered here in Burbank. We are Burbank centric.
Yeah.
So
please, once again, do your research on Measure P. Know that the city is spending your tax dollars to get you to vote yes on Measure P. That should tell you something. Do your research.
They're scaring you into it.
Yeah, do your research, and then, of course, vote no on Measure P. That's what we're hoping.
Don't forget, we don't have a revenue problem here in Burbank.
We have a spending problem. And we'll see you next time on the
Mike and Roy Show.
Mike and Roy.